Hey, good evening, Trinity Baptist family. This is Pastor Matt Crawford. Welcome back to our Wednesday evening Bible study. This is week 18, and we're going to be looking at 1 Samuel chapter 28 and 29. Would you pray with me as we begin? Father, thank you for the opportunity to look at your word. Thank you for the privilege of gathering with your people and worshiping you through hearing your truth. God, may we know you better. May we know your truth and understand your word. And may we not just hear it, but do it. May we put it into practice. Lord, thank you for the life of David and his faith in you in the most difficult of situations. Thank you for how you used David and his family ultimately to bring Jesus into the world to rescue us. Bless us on this Easter week as we come up to the celebration of Jesus' resurrection. Lord, use our church for your glory, and may you bring many visitors who will come and hear your gospel and believe in Christ and follow him in discipleship. Lord, bless us now as we open your word. In Jesus' name, amen. 1 Samuel 28 and 29, as Saul has finally stopped chasing David because he is about to deal with a huge threat from the Philistines. And these are sad chapters for Saul. Let's look at it in chapter 28, verse 1. At that time, the Philistines gathered their military units into one army to fight against Israel. So it looks like they're sort of gearing up for a major confrontation. They're tired of skirmishes. They're gathering up their army into one major fighting force to push for a major victory. So Achish, remember this is the king of Gath, where David is currently staying to get away from Saul, which is an awkward situation because Gath is where Goliath was from, whom David had killed. It says, so Achish said to David, you know, of course, that you and your men must march out in the army with me. So I've given you this place to stay. You're my loyal subject at this point. When we go out into battle, even against Israel, you're expected to go with me and fight against your homeland, your own people. David replied to Achish, good, you will find out what your servant can do. And so he answers in a way that continues to cause Achish to think that he's actually on his side. Remember, we've seen in a previous chapter that David has been going out and raiding other parts of the land of Canaan, fighting against Israel's enemies, completing more of the task that was not completed when the Israelites came into the land of Canaan, the task that the Lord had given them of cleansing the land of the Canaanites. David is doing that, but at each place he leaves no survivors so that no one can go back and tell Achish who he actually attacked. And he's deceiving Achish and telling him that he's attacking parts of Israel or Judah. And so he continues throughout these two chapters, continues this ruse and is causing Achish to think that he is his loyal subject and that he's ready to fight against his own people because he's actually made him think that he's already been doing that. So Achish said to David, very well, I will appoint you as my permanent bodyguard. He's making him like his secret service. This is how much he trusts David. And again, in God's providence, as you'll see over these two chapters, the Lord is taking care of David. He's giving him favor with this king in spite of the fact that David is still a loyal Israelite. And the Lord is going to get him out of a pretty difficult situation that we'll see as a result of this conversation that Achish has. Verse 3. By this time, Samuel had died. So this is this great prophet, judge, who had led the people. He's sort of been fading from the situation for a while, or fading from the national stage for a while, as Saul has been king, and I think as Samuel has just gotten up there in years, and it seems like his ministry may have been limited, in his older years, because he had a traveling aspect to his ministry for a long time. But here he finally passes away. It says, by this time Samuel had died. All Israel had mourned for him and buried him in Ramah, his city. And Saul had removed the mediums and spiritists from the land. So you may wonder where that's coming from, but it's setting up what's about to happen. Samuel has now passed away. Saul is unable to go and get a word of the Lord from Samuel. And Saul had done during his reign something that honored the Lord. He had purged the land of the mediums and spiritists, meaning people who would try to communicate with spirits from the dead. The Lord had been very clear in the Old Testament law and the Mosaic law that his people were not to use any kind of witchcraft, divination, sorcery, consulting mediums or spiritists. It was a strong penalty against this. Just a few verses. Here's Leviticus 19:31. It says, "Do not turn to mediums or consult spiritists, or you will be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God, because of who I am, because I am to be the one in whom you trust. Don't go to them, and don't go to this demonic, it's supernatural, but in a bad sense. Don't go to this demonic supernatural source to try to find your guidance. This is not right. This is, in fact, it's an abomination before the Lord." Here's another one, Leviticus 20, verse 6. "Whoever turns to mediums or spiritists and prostitutes himself with them." In other words, it's like a spiritual prostitution of turning one's heart over to them. It's an unfaithfulness to the Lord, like prostitution would be for someone who's married, for example. I will turn against that person and cut him off from his people. A strong penalty, and actually there's a penalty here for the person who actually is the medium in Leviticus 20, verse 27. "A man or a woman who is a medium or a spiritist must be put to death." So the death penalty, capital punishment, was prescribed for those who had practiced this kind of things, who would turn against the Lord in that kind of rebellion and try to consult the spirits of the dead. It says they are to be stoned. Their death is their own fault. So Scripture was very clear in warning against this. Don't go to these people. Don't be one of these people. And Saul had actually honored the Lord. We haven't really heard about this earlier in the book, but Saul had honored the Lord in purging the land of them and outlawing it and pursuing them, chasing them out, or I don't know if he imprisoned them or whatever he did, but he made it illegal, and he executed justice on those in the land who had done this. So here we go, verse 4. "The Philistines gathered and camped at Shunem. So Saul gathered all Israel," so he gets his army together to respond to this threat, "and they camped at Gilboa. When Saul saw the Philistine camp, he was afraid, and his heart pounded." We've seen in the book of 1 Samuel that many times the Israelites were outmatched by the Philistines in weaponry and in military power. But the Lord had given them victories as they trusted in him. Saul, however, is fearful. He knows that the Lord is not with him anymore. He's been tormented by this evil spirit. These were the results of his disobedience of the Lord, especially with the situation of the Amalekites. But there had been other times as well. He had forced himself to, as he said, perform the sacrifices when Samuel was supposed to do it. So the Lord had rejected him as king and removed the blessing of his spirit. And so Saul is rightly very afraid here. But what he does makes the situation worse. Verse 6, "He inquired of the Lord, but the Lord did not answer him in dreams or by the Urim or by the prophets." These were the three of the legitimate ways that he could consult the Lord. Just praying to the Lord directly, as he does, and seeking the Lord answer him like in dreams. Using the Urim, which was the casting of the lots in some way. I don't understand that. In fact, I don't think any Bible scholars know fully how that worked. But the Lord doesn't answer through it. I'm not sure how that was clear, but it was. And then the prophets. Either he can't find any of the prophets, or of course Samuel's now dead, or maybe the prophets just refuse to answer him, or say the Lord has not given me a word regarding this battle. But he's thwarted at every turn. And again, this is a result of his previous disobedience. But then he makes it worse in verse 7. "Saul then said to his servants, 'Find me a woman who is a medium, so I can go and consult her.' His servants replied, 'There is a woman at Endor who is a medium.'" So it's interesting that he had tried to purge the land of these sorts of folks, and it sounds like he had been largely successful, but this woman had survived. I don't know if his servants already knew about her, or if they found out about her by searching, but somehow people did know about her, and she had escaped Saul's judgment before. The problem is, you don't deal with a situation where you're seeking God. He's trying to do something good. He's seeking the Lord's counsel before this battle, but then he ends up trying to do it through something evil. He tries to find out the future and what's going to happen in the battle through something evil, and so he's making the situation even worse. And the reality is, you'll see that when he gets this message from the medium, it's not helpful at all. And so it was all to no point. The God was going to do what he was going to do. I think clearly the Lord is orchestrating all of this situation with the Philistines coming up to remove Saul as king and ultimately to place David as king. So consulting this medium doesn't help at all. Um, we don't make better choices. We don't make good choices by resulting to evil or something that's an abomination before the Lord. And that's the tragic mistake here, the tragic rebellion here that Saul commits. Verse 8, Saul disguised himself by putting on different clothes and set out with 2 of his men. They came to the woman at night, and Saul said, consult a spirit for me. Bring up for me the one I tell you. But the woman said to him, you surely know what Saul has done, how he has cut off the mediums and spiritists from the land. Why are you setting a trap for me to get me killed? She doesn't know that he's Saul. He's disguised himself, and he sought her out. And she says, you know this is illegal. You're setting me up to get me in trouble, to get me even killed, since we saw that capital punishment in the book of Leviticus was prescribed for people like this. Then Saul swore to her by the Lord. So he swears an oath by the true God that he's not going to have her punished. He'll make sure that she won't get in trouble. As surely as the Lord lives, no punishment will come to you from this. Who is it that you want me to bring up for you? The woman asked. So she moves forward in this sin. Bring up Samuel for me, he answered. And so she does it. The biblical author, thankfully, leaves out however she does this. When the woman saw Samuel, she screamed. It's interesting. Why did she scream? It makes me wonder, and I actually even saw this in one of the commentators on this text. It makes me wonder, had she actually ever truly been successful in bringing up spirits from the dead before? Or was she shocked that it worked this time? Had she been faking in previous time? I think that often, if not always, is the case when we have, folks who are doing tarot cards or palm readings or, claiming to be mediums. I think it's often completely fake, and it's a scam, and they're charging people money, and they're just making up things. However, in this case, Samuel's spirit does come up from the dead. I don't know if the woman screams because she's surprised it actually happened, or maybe she screams because of Samuel's appearance, or as we'll see in a moment, she recognizes that somehow, we're not told, but somehow when Samuel comes up, she recognizes that the man who's requested his appearance is Saul. And by the way, that would make sense that the king would be seeking out the word of this prophet. They had had a relationship before that was well known. So she may have sort of put 2 and 2 together. I'm not sure how she knew. But at this point, this truly happens. Samuel comes up, which raises just an interesting question for us about these sort of things in the world. I don't really want to explore this, and I don't think Christians need to look into this and say, well, how is this happening? Is it possible today? Clearly, his spirit did come up here, and clearly, even more strongly, we know that Christians aren't to mess with this at all. This is not something that we should be curious about and looking into or pursuing or participating in. We should stay as far away from this as we can. Just like Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians 6 to flee sexual immorality, I think this is something we're supposed to flee as well. The Lord's Holy Spirit indwells us as Christians. There's no better source of knowledge and information and guidance. We don't need to mess with this. We should stay as far away from this as we can. And as you'll see, it did not benefit Saul either. There are TV shows and stuff today that claim to speak to spirits from the dead. I don't know if it's real. I think in many cases, if not most of those cases, if not all those cases today, it's fake. But it's not something that Christians should participate in. I don't even think a Christian should watch that show. I honestly think it's wrong for a Christian to watch that show and to participate in just partaking of that and just defiling ourselves, I think, in that way, as Scripture says. So it says, let's see. When the woman saw Samuel, she screamed, and then she asked Saul, why did you deceive me? You are Saul. Somehow, perhaps Samuel's spirit said Saul's name. I don't know. But at that point, she realizes that he is the king. But the king said to her, don't be afraid. I'm not going to punish you for this. What do you see? I see a spirit form coming up out of the earth, the woman answered. And this is actually happening. Then Saul asked her, what does he look like? An old man is coming up, she replied. He's wearing a robe. Then Saul knew that it was Samuel. Somehow at this point he realizes that it truly is Samuel, as she has said. And he knelt low with his face to the ground and paid homage. So he's honoring Samuel. He's paying homage to him, but Samuel is not happy. "Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up?" Samuel asked Saul. He's in some state of rest at this point, and yet he's upset that rest has been disturbed. "I'm in serious trouble," replied Saul. "The Philistines are fighting against me, and God has turned away from me. He doesn't answer me anymore, either through the prophets or in dreams. So I've called on you to tell me what I should do." It makes me wonder at this point, like, if Saul had truly repented and truly sought the Lord, would this have been different? And I think that's very possible, that if he had truly repented and asked God to lead him, that the situation may have been different. At this point, he seems to only care about a true relationship with the Lord when he needs information like this. He's about to go into a battle. It's almost like he's trying to use the Lord, or only have a relationship with God for his own his own needs at the moment, or his own desires or plan at the moment. And God's not going to be used by us. We have to guard against that as Christians as well. Sometimes we only care about the Lord when we're in trouble, and suddenly we get very spiritual. I think that's sort of what's happening here with Saul. Let's see, verse... He doesn't answer me more, either through the prophets or in dreams, so I've called on you to tell me what I should do. Verse 16. Samuel answered, "Since the Lord has turned away from you and has become your enemy, why are you asking me?" He's like, "You know these things. You've just repeated to me why this is. So there's no point in reaching out to me. The Lord has rejected you as king, and here are the results. The Lord has done exactly what he said through me." He's like, "I prophesied this before I died. You know what's going to happen. The Lord has torn the kingship out of your hand and given it to your neighbor David." And back then, God did not give you the prescribed timeline for when that would happen. And it's wrong of you to be seeking a medium and a spirit from the dead to find out the moment of when it's going to happen. You know it's going to happen. The Lord said you're going to lose the kingship. You should not have come to me. You should not have brought me up and disturbed me. Let's see, verse 18. "You did not obey the Lord and did not carry out his burning anger against Amalek." That's that situation we talked about a minute ago. "Therefore, the Lord has done this to you today. The Lord will also hand Israel over to the Philistines along with you." So sadly, there's going to be a whole battle that the army will lose, and there will be many casualties. "Tomorrow," this is the most ominous part, "tomorrow you and your sons will be with me." In other words, you and your sons are going to die. And be dead spirits at that point. "And the Lord will hand Israel's army over to the Philistines." A tragedy will occur nationally. Not just the king will die, not just that the king will die, but that there'll be a massive defeat by the army. "Immediately Saul fell flat on the ground." And this is not a helpful situation for him. "He was terrified by Samuel's words and was also weak because he had not eaten anything all day and all night." It's possible that he had fasted in preparation for this wicked ceremony. Or maybe he's just so overwhelmed by the battle situation, the military situation, that he hasn't eaten. But that doesn't help him here. The emotional, spiritual, physical parts all overwhelm him. He just falls down. It's almost like he faints. The woman came over to Saul, and she saw that he was terrified and said to him, "Look, your servant has obeyed you. I took my life in my hands and did what you told me to do." She's like, "I honored your request. I called up Samuel from the dead. Now, please listen to your servant." She's like, "Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Let me set some food in front of you. Eat, and it will give you strength so you can go on your way." She said, "Look, you need some food." He refused, saying, "I won't eat." But when his servants, so he has other men there with him, perhaps generals or military leaders or his court. But when his servants and the woman urged him, he listened to them. He got up off the ground and sat on the bed. The woman had a fattened calf at her house, and she quickly slaughtered it. So she brings out the best here, I think, and provides it for the king. She also took flour, kneaded it, and baked unleavened bread. She served it to Saul and his servants, and they ate. Afterward, they got up and left that night. So he does receive some strength from this food and is able to leave. Chapter 29. The Philistines brought all their military units together at Aphek, while Israel was camped by the spring in Jezreel. As the Philistine leaders were passing in review with their units of hundreds and thousands, so they're reviewing the military, looking at their readiness for the upcoming battle, David and his men were passing in review behind them with Achish. So there's, the Philistines had 5 different kind of cities that were almost like city-states that were united together. Gath is one of them, so they're having the different groups of armies pass by from these different cities, and the military group from Achish passes by, and in the formation there is David and his men. He's got about 600 men, last we knew. And the Philistine commanders are like, what is going on? Verse 3, then the Philistine commanders asked, what are these Hebrews doing here? We're about to go into battle against Hebrews. Why are there Hebrews in our midst? There's an enemy in the camp. How is this allowed? Achish answered the Philistine commanders, that is David, servant of King Saul of Israel. Interesting that he still calls him that, since he's been with Achish for a while. He has been with me a considerable period of time. I believe it was about 18 months from a previous chapter. From the day he defected until today, I found no fault with him. So basically, he sees David as having defected over to the Philistine side, and he said, I've found nothing wrong with him. Again, he has not found out about what David has actually been doing to bless the people of Israel during that time. The Philistine commanders, however, were enraged with Achish and told him, and by the way, they're right here. They told him, send that man back and let him return to the place you assigned him. He must not go down with us into battle, only to become our adversary during the battle. What better way could he ingratiate himself with his master than with the heads of our men? Isn't this the David they sing about during their dances? Saul has killed his thousands, but David his tens of thousands. They remember the death of Goliath. They remember that David was Israel's champion, and he had led out the armies of Saul. He had never betrayed Saul, despite all that Saul had done against him. And this, they remember the song, Saul has killed his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. And they're like, this is not okay. Which brings up an interesting question. What was David's plan? Did he plan to march in a battle and then sort of slip away before fighting his fellow Israelites? Was he going to fight his fellow Israelites? I highly doubt that is the case. I don't know if he had a plan in mind yet, or if he was just praying and saying, Lord, I need a way out of this. Or did David plan on turning against the Philistines? And fighting them from within, or being able to sort of have a pincer move, and the Israelites come from one side and David and his group from another side, like we see in many military battles, coming from two different angles. I don't know. But the Philistine commanders, I think, are wise to say, no, we've seen this guy's loyalties. He's a Hebrew. He should not be in battle with us. So Achish summoned David and told him, as the Lord lives, you are an honorable man. That's true. David has been an honorable man, but he still has been loyal to his people despite what Achish thinks. I think it is good to have you fighting in this unit with me, because I have found no fault in you from the day you came to me until today. And again, you can see God's favor on David in giving him a place to stay. Achish, the favor that he had with Achish, took care of him, kept him away from Saul, and allowed him to launch these raids that helped the people of Israel, and that continued the Lord's command of conquest in Canaan. But the leaders don't think you are reliable. Now go back quietly, and you won't be doing anything the Philistine leaders think is wrong. He's like, I got to appease these guys. They're enraged, or the other military commanders. Just go back to where we live quietly. Go back to Gath and where I've given you a place to stay, and you won't get any other trouble with these leaders. But what have I done? David just continues the act here. What have I done? David replied to Achish. From the first day I entered your service until today, what have you found against your servant to keep me from going to fight against the enemies of my lord the king? Speaking of Achish, you're my lord the king. I want to go fight against your enemies. Again, I think this is an act, clearly. Achish answered David, I'm convinced that you are as reliable as an angel of God. This is quite the favor he has with him. But the Philistine commanders have said he must not go into battle with us. So get up early in the morning, you and your master's servants who came with you. When you've all gotten up early, go as soon as it's light. So David and his men got up early in the morning to return to the land of the Philistines. And the Philistines went up to Jezreel. And as we know, this battle is not going to go well. Samuel has prophesied it in the previous chapter. I think it's clear that the Lord is blessing and taking care of David, getting him out of a very difficult situation to where he doesn't have to go in and fight against his own people. But he also doesn't have to be part of this battle that we know is not going to go well for God's people. Achish doesn't send him over to the Israelite side. He sends him back to the Philistine side. And had David gone into that battle, the Philistine commanders having dominated the Israelites, as we'll see happens. They may have turned on David at that point in the moment of their victory. The Lord spares him from all of this. God takes care of his people. So our big takeaways from these two passages, that's one of them. While I'm talking about it, I'll go ahead and do that one first, is that the Lord takes care of his people, even in the most difficult and the most complex situations. You think about Daniel in Babylon, all the difficult situations he was in with all the idolatry around and the wicked kings and emperors that he had to serve. Even the law at one point against praying to the Lord, and yet he trusts God. He continues to be faithful. He does pray to the Lord, and God rescues him. And that's not to say that God will always rescue us from harm for obeying him. We know that that's not the case. Think of Paul's life. Think of Jesus' own death despite his innocence. Think of Stephen, the martyr, being killed. That doesn't mean that we'll always be rescued in this life. But God will give us the strength to be faithful, to trust him. He will give us a way out of temptation so that we'll not be tempted beyond what we can bear. He's faithful in that. And even if we do die, we know that he takes us home to be with him, and he rewards those who are faithful. God is all powerful. He knows your situation. You can trust him in the middle of it, even as difficult and as complex as it might be. So along with David, put your hope in the Lord. Second, again, we learn from the life of Saul, as we've seen previously in this book, don't use evil means to try to accomplish good ends. Earlier, he had a battle he was about to fight, and he wanted to offer a sacrifice before that battle, and Samuel was late in showing up, and so Saul foolishly and wickedly offered the sacrifice himself. The king was not supposed to do that. So he was using an evil means to try to accomplish a good end. I had to gain God's favor before the battle. You don't gain God's favor through disobedience. And you can't solve this problem of trying to lead God's people against the Philistines by consulting a medium. That's not going to help the situation. You're not going to gain God's favor back. You're not going to have success in battle by doing those sorts of things. Witchcraft, second, or lastly, actually third. Witchcraft, divination, sorcery, all these things are abominations before the Lord. I think in many cases today they're completely faked, but I do think there are Satan and demonic forces are beyond the natural world. They are supernatural as well. Now their power is in no comparison to God's. And so we don't have to be worried that Satan's going to overpower us when we're trusting in the Lord. But the demonic supernatural world is real, and we have to be aware of it and pray in this regard. Pray against demonic forces. Pray as we engage in spiritual warfare. Our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places. And we are locked in a struggle that's bigger than life and death. It's about eternity. It's about souls. And so as Christians, we don't mess with those things at all, with witchcraft and divination and sorcery. We trust in the Lord. We go to his Holy Spirit who lives inside every Christian. We go to his word. He has spoken to us with love and grace and in great detail. The Bible's a big book. There's a lot of wonderful truth he's given us. Go to his word for guidance, and listen to his spirit and pray to him and worship him in spirit and in truth. Let's pray together as we close. Lord, thank you for these chapters. May we learn from Saul's disobedience, and may we learn from David's faith and obedience. Lord, thank you for taking care of your people faithfully, even in the midst of difficult and complex situations. Lord, may we stay far away from wickedness, from witchcraft, and those sorts of things. May we just run from them and run to you. And Lord, may we never try to use evil means to accomplish good ends. That doesn't work. That makes things worse. Lord, may we trust in you and walk in uprightness. Lord, thank you for your word. Bless us and use us for your glory this week. Guide our church. Grow us, Lord, in numbers. Grow us in depth and closeness to you. In Jesus' holy name, amen. Really appreciate you watching. Hope you have a great week. Hope to see you on Easter Sunday in person or online. Take care. Bye-bye.